Hi guys and welcome back to the channel. My name is Dr. Maddie and I'm one of your doctors from the UK. You know, I had thought to go completely clean shaven for this video just because it would make me look more like Saitama, but I think my facial hair is too iconic now. Anyway, today, yes you've guessed it, I'm going to be looking at the One Punch anime. I'll be breaking down several different fight scenes, explaining the injuries that have been sustained and how we would treat them, as well as looking at some of the medical science behind some of the characters' strengths. And we're going to be doing this by following the character Garou from his first appearance in the Hero Association through all his fights in the second season. Now, I take your recommendations for further anime shows really seriously, so if there are any other shows that you'd like me to break down, please leave those down in the comments below. And don't forget that you can support this channel just by giving this video a like, commenting or sharing it with one of your friends. With that being said, if you're ready, let's begin. Okay, so it's here that we first get introduced to the character Garou. He presents himself to the Hero Association, claiming that he's taken down multiple dojos worth of martial artists. Now, I'm not sure how many students there are in a martial arts dojo, so it's difficult to determine how strong or how impressive a feat this really is. But he's certainly got an intimidating appearance. I like his look, he kind of gives off a feral wild animal vibe, a bit like Wolverine from the Marvel series. Oh god, that's one hell of a fracture to his arm. I mean, he's got bones going out left and right. It kind of reminds me of one of those road signs that tell you that there's a windy road ahead. And unfortunately, it's not straightforward to fix this either. To fix this, you'd really need open surgery with plates and screws to help straighten the bones to allow them to heal. Nasty stuff. I didn't realise, but this guy has like an 8-pack set of abs. Is that even possible? But clearly it was just muscle for show if Garou was able to take him out with one uppercut. Oh gosh, and he's gone and lent him a hand to help finish off the rest of the heroes. But my goodness, what an injury. In reality, a feat like ripping off someone's arm is almost impossible. I guess something more common and more realistic that we see in children is something like a pulled elbow. And this typically occurs by a sudden pull on a child's lower arm or their wrist, typically if you're lifting them up by one of their arms. Now, this type of injury normally causes a dislocation of the radial bone at the forearm. This can be gently relocated after an X-ray confirms that there's no fracture, and the child can be comfortably sent on their way. Oh gosh, okay, so not only has he defeated the remaining heroes, but he's also thrown this one-armed man up against the wall, and unfortunately that doesn't look like an injury that you can walk away from. The danger of high impact trauma to the back of the head is the risk of a basal skull fracture, which can be life-threatening due to it causing brain damage. Now, some signs that we look out for as doctors that might indicate a basal skull fracture are things like leakage of cerebrospinal fluid through the nose or ears. Now, this is the fluid that normally surrounds the brain, and with a fracture, that can sometimes come out of both of those areas. Another sign that we look out for is something called raccoon eyes, where you develop significant bruising around both of your eyes, and we also look for something called a battle sign, where you get bruising found behind your ear. Oh, straight to the already broken nose. That's gotta hurt. But you know, I used to work as an ear, nose and throat surgeon, and after we would operate on a nose job, we would place an internal dressing inside the nose that resembled a tampon. And externally, we would apply a cast dressing to help keep the alignment of the corrected nasal bones. Now watching this guy getting punched in an already broken nose is really annoying because it takes so much time to create the normal alignment. At this point you're probably dealing with so many more bony fragments. It would be like trying to reconstruct a puzzle that had 100,000 pieces. Thanks. Tank top tackle delivered by Tank Top Master. Oh, and he's also wearing a tank top. I love the creativity behind the design and the naming of these characters. I think there was a tank top vegetarian earlier. Is it just a matter of changing the word in front of the name tank top? But the move he's done here on Garou kind of looks like a wrestling move, and depending on the speed and power he can generate behind that, it would be like hitting a truck. The true and fair fight we need to see here is Tank Top Master versus Truck-san. This is really interesting. So Tank Top Master is detecting a really eerie and menacing sensation coming from Garou's character. But what is this inexplicable feeling that some fighters can have towards their opponents? Now, this sensation is what some people refer to as presence, and it's a really interesting idea. It's defined as the state of being attuned to and able to comfortably express our true thoughts, feelings, values, and potential. And there's plenty of examples of fighters out there who've not only been able to manifest this, but also make it part of their personality in popular culture. Now, in the case of Garou, he truly believes that he's the strongest monster out there, and that there is no one who can challenge him. He believes this so absolutely that it manifests in all aspects of his being, whether that's his physical, intimidating, feral appearance, or his absolute confidence in his fighting abilities. Moomin Rider, what an odd hero design he has. I mean, what are his powers anyway? All I can say is thank goodness he's wearing a helmet. Otherwise, that tank top punch might have ended him. Remember guys, always wear a helmet when cycling or fighting. Oh gosh, okay. And again here we see the almost feral, animalistic fighting style of Garou as he pushes Tank Top Master's face through a concrete wall. Now, had this been any other member of the Tank Top army, I think we'd be looking at facial fractures and brain damage, but for some reason Tank Top Master is so durable. Oh, but what did he think he was going to achieve? Crashing his bike into Garou. Just the sound of hearing his face getting pummeled into the ground is enough to make me think that he's likely to be sustaining facial fractures despite wearing the helmet. But that's not to say that wearing the helmet wouldn't give him some form of protection. Remember that the hard shell of a helmet is designed to help spread the impact force across a greater surface area of the skull, thereby reducing the chances of a skull fracture, whilst the soft inner liner is designed to squeeze inwards to absorb the impact energy so that less is transmitted to the head. That's why you should always wear a helmet. Oh, okay, so here he takes out Tank Top Master with one easy uppercut. And after having watched many different fight scenes like this, people tend to let down their guard when they're getting really pumped up and going to attack, which leaves them vulnerable to a finishing move like this. Basically, the shock of the punch is transmitted through the skull, shaking the brain, leading it to shut down. Alright, so next up, Garou has targeted Golden Ball, a sharpshooter specialist. And this is probably the worst time that Golden Ball could run into Garou, as he's drinking alcohol, and we know that this slows down your reflexes and, depending on how drunk you are, can cause double vision. Oh, nice! So he's got a slingshot here, and these can do quite a bit of damage depending what you're firing. And here it's gone straight through Garou's calf, and these can actually be powerful enough to penetrate bone. And Golden Ball talks about here having missed his vital structures, and I think he's alluding to the femoral artery that's found in the thigh. If this was ruptured, you'd be looking at death from blood loss within 3 minutes. Gosh, okay, so Garou is now dealing with multiple projectiles flying everywhere around him, and he's doing a great job of dodging these. Now, to give a frame of reference here as to how quickly Garou is moving, we know that these projectiles are moving fast enough to penetrate skin. And we know that to break through skin, these projectiles need to be travelling at least 130 miles an hour, so Garou is at least travelling at this speed. I wonder how quick both Genos and Saitama would compare to this. And just in the nick of time, Spring Mustachio springs into rescue. But what a dapper gentleman he is. I can see that he's taken on the Mustachio, much like myself, and he's actually made it his calling card. I like the fact that he's also using a fencing sword. It's not something we see very often in anime. And what a camp name for a finishing move. Tomboy. But anyway, Garou takes this fencing sword through the hand, which is a very similar injury to having a nail through the hand, which is a surprisingly common injury we see in A&E. Now, due to a fencing sword being so thin, it's unlikely to have done any damage to the hard structures in his hand, and as a result, he's likely to make a full recovery from this with very minimal treatment needed. So next up on the hunt list for Garou is Watchdog Man, and I love his design. He's just so basic. I remember hearing a fan theory about the power levels in the One Punch Man anime. The more basic the facial appearance, the stronger they're likely to be. Is there any truth in this? Let me know down below. Nice, so here we're seeing Garou execute one of his special moves. Fist of Water Stream Rock Smashing Fist, which is a form of martial arts that he learns under his previous master, Bang. Now this basically allows him to perform very powerful and very fast punches against a strong opponent. And a master or a skilled practitioner of this form of martial arts like Bang is able to execute it almost on autopilot. And you might be asking yourself whether this is possible. Well, yes it is. It's a bit like how someone learns a musical instrument or another competitive sport like tennis. You develop muscle memory to the point where your movements almost become automatic or reflexes. Now, it's been quoted in multiple sources of media that you need up to 10,000 hours of practicing anything before you reach this sort of expert level. And this might explain why Garou's having difficulty against Watchdog Man. He's maybe just not reached that proficient master level yet. Oh, so yes, it looks like Garou got away with his encounter from Watchdog Man by the skin of his teeth. I mean, he looks pretty beat up in this scene, and maybe it's because Watchdog Man is just as animalistic and as feral as he is. But fortunately, or should I say unfortunately, he stumbled across both King and Saitama, but for some reason I don't think he's ready to battle them out yet. This must be one of the shortest recorded fights in anime history. But I'm surprised here to see that this kick didn't cause Garou just to explode, as I've seen Saitama do this to other characters with far less. Okay, so next up we've got Garou taking on Metal Bat, and for some reason he looks out of place in this universe. He almost looks like he belongs in either the JoJo series or Hajime no Ippo. He looks a bit like Takamura to me. What do you think? But it's important to mention that a baseball bat has been labelled by many authorities as a silent weapon due to the high level of fatal injuries inflicted with one. Clearly, in the wrong hands, it can be a lethal weapon, causing things like crush injuries to bones, internal organ damage, and if you strike someone's head, this can lead to a skull fracture, brain damage, coma, and even death. And I love how in this scene Metal Bat is wielding his bat as if it's like an unrefined form of swordsmanship. However, swinging frantically like this is a really good way to wear yourself down. And at some point you've got to ask yourself, does this look like swordsmanship or does it look like a game of whack-a-mole? So this is really interesting. So Metal Bat is explaining that he's getting his stamina and strength by just being pumped up. And if we read his bio, it states that when the intensity of Metal Bat's anger reaches its maximum, his power approaches infinity. So basically, the more angered he becomes, the more pumped up he becomes, and therefore the more powerful he is. Now, if you've seen my video on the science behind Baki training, you'll remember that emotions can impact the amount of power that we can put into our punches and kicks. In fact, studies had shown that kicks that were thrown when people were angered were up to 25% more powerful than when kicked at a baseline state. The only thing to take into consideration is that anger can only be helpful for so far, beyond which you can go into what's called a blind rage. At this point you might be really powerful, but you're likely to be unfocused, which is what you need when you're coming up to a strong, skilled opponent. So here he's able to generate a tornado using just the swing of his bat alone. And just out of interest, he'd need to be swinging this bat up to 160 miles an hour to be doing this. Now, something being swung at this speed would be theoretically as destructive as a tornado itself. And if you've ever seen how destructive a tornado can be, you'd understand that the best option would be to run away. Oh, so using his smashing fist martial arts, Garou has been able to contact the Metal Bat during its swing, slowing it down, allowing him to deliver a powerful hit to Metal Bat's abdomen. Now, the surprise of such a move to an unflexed abdomen is definitely enough to win somebody. In fact, in this case, it's taken the wind out of his tornado. This is because a hit to the abdomen causes your diaphragm to go into spasm, which effectively means you can't utilize this muscle to breathe. As a result, you feel winded. Oh gosh, he almost had him there. But this is a really beautifully animated scene. For some reason it reminds me of the Hellsing anime, but this has clearly exposed Metal Bat's weakness, his younger sister. I always find it interesting when you have these brutally aggressive characters who also have this soft and gentler side to themselves. Kinda reminds me of Kenpachi from the Bleach anime. Okay, so we're finally on to Garou taking on the 8 heroes who've been hunting him down. And as you've seen from the fight so far, Garou has been through quite a lot up until now. I suspect that he's got multiple different injuries at this point, and the last thing that he would want is to fight 8 more heroes, especially when they've all got their own skill set, physical abilities and weapons. Oh, okay, so Garou starts by taking a bullet to the thigh, and this starts the blood loss. He also takes a hit to the right upper quadrant, which could cause rib fractures or liver damage. Remember from my Hajime no Ippo video that a strong enough punch to the liver can cause a liver capsule rupture and internal bleeding. Also, it can trigger the parasympathetic nervous system, which shuts down your body by lowering your blood pressure and heart rate and leading you to collapse. Oh, okay, and we can now see that he's taken some of those poisonous arrows to the back. Now, the poison that these arrows are covered in are likely derived from poisons extracted from the skin of animals. And a common animal that people use is a dart frog. Now, if you want to learn a bit more about how this poison works, I've covered this in one of my previous JoJo videos. I'll leave a link down below in the description. Okay, so Garou is even beginning to doubt his ability of escaping out of this alive. However, sometimes we need to be pushed into a corner for us to access our full potential. In such circumstances, our bodies go into survival mode, where we're able to access our fight or flight response, where we can harness the effects of our stored adrenaline. The benefits of utilising adrenaline are that it can help to numb our pain and give us the strength to help escape from that threatening environment. Gosh, getting slammed by a multi-ton sphere of concrete. This kind of reminds me of the Indiana Jones scene when he gets chased down the corridor. But here we'd be looking at multiple crush injuries to several bones around the body, and I'd be surprised if your whole body wasn't in cast for several weeks. A way to think about it is imagine you're crushing a piece of garlic between a pestle and mortar. That's what would be happening to your internal organs. Oh, multiple rocks to the body. And this is effectively like getting hit from Golden Ball's slingshot like we discussed earlier. And it looks like he's sustained both facial bone and rib fractures. Now, facial bone fractures might need to be managed with reconstructive surgery, but for rib fractures, unfortunately, all we can really do is give pain relief. Isn't this guy just Saitama before he goes bald? I mean, he's even wearing his training tracksuit, right? And that hit to the face there, he's definitely lost some teeth as we see bony fragments flying everywhere, but he's also likely to have quite significant facial bruising due to the compression of his glasses into his face. You can always tell a glasses wearer from the patients in the A&E department who've come in with a collapse, as they get this stereotypical bruising pattern around their eyes. God, and further multiple punches to the abdomen here in what I can only imagine would lead to multi-organ damage and internal bleeding. He'd really need to be rushed to a CT scanner to determine the extent of the internal organ damage. He'd then need a close period of observation to make sure he doesn't go into any end organ failure. And it also looks like Saitama's doppelganger has been wiped out of the fight with a fractured spine. So he'd need to be immobilized on a stretcher until we can determine the extent of damage to his spinal column. This guy is pretty cool. He kind of reminds me of Ghost Rider or the Terminator, but thanks to his attack, Garou now knows that he can withstand firearms. I think if I was Death Gatling in this scene, I would have stayed as the skeleton. At least at that point I'd already be dead, and Garou wouldn't be able to kill me. Okay guys, what a marathon of scenes we've gone through today. We've covered so much. But hopefully that's brought you up to speed with Garou's journey throughout Season 2 and has gotten you ready for Season 3, which I hope is airing sometime soon. Otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you've still got time, why not watch one of these two videos? And I'll otherwise see you in the next one. Thanks.